As you've seen, the administrative capital is under fire with reports of looting, destruction of property and general anarchy. The sporadic violence is allegedly propelled by supporters of incumbent Mayor Tshwane Tshwane, which he vehemently denies, saying he condemns any perpetrator of violence using his name for their cause. Meanwhile, some disgruntled ANC members say they will vote for the DA unless the ANC reverses the decision to nominate Didiza as mayoral candidate for the city. With all this upheaval, is law enforcement absent in this disruption? On the debate, we ask if the police are adequately equipped to deal with acts of riots and political and criminal elements under the guise of ANC members being disgruntled. Now, joining us is Jabu Mahlangu Sanko, spokesperson. Tshepo Khadima is a political analyst, and Mayor of Tshwane, Tshwane will join us on the line. Thanks, gentlemen, for your time, for coming in. I mean, do you accept the rationale from the ANC that they completely flabbergasted, they were taken by surprise on the intensity of the violence or how events unfolded?
Well, I guess the country was taken. I think all of us were surprised by this development, and I think from where we stand as Sanko, we are still not quite impressed about it. And we believe that there is something beyond the issue that we are looking at, because I mean the extent to which violence, destruction of properties, burning of buses, stealing of goods, I mean destroying of people's private shops, it can never be associated with a dissenting voice on a question of an election of a person. The two cannot be reconciled. It's just unreconcilable. I guess there's just something serious that needs to be investigated so that the matter is dealt with. Because if we just look at what has happened and we assume that indeed it is the reason for this behavior, I think we may just be missing the point. That's our view.
But Tshepo, is it just that the undertone of the society we live in does have a very serious streak of violence, or in the sense of if you are disgruntled or you're dissatisfied, you will vent your anger out in the streets? Can we distinguish this one and particularly say there's criminality, or there's a third force masquerading as disgruntled ANC members?
My reading is that this is not politics, but this is criminality. The question that one has to ask is that, well, if indeed it is criminality, how is it possible that the people that are engaged in these criminal acts are not fearful in any shape or form of being arrested? And if I look at it, I continue to be even more concerned that since the outbreak of this violence, we have seen very little of the law enforcement agencies, and particularly the South African Police Service. It reminds me of what Norman Schwarzkopf once said, that the 14 rules of leadership, rule number 13 is that when placed in command, you must take charge. And when you are in charge, you must do what is right and act responsibly. And certainly, I think the police management, they've been placed in charge, but it doesn't seem like they are able to take command and do what is right. And that should be worrying all of us, because if you look at it, if this is going to be the way forward during this campaign period leading to the 3rd of August, then we should all be worried. The question that we must ask is that, should there be an eruption of violence in other provinces or in other regions, are our police equipped to be able to deal with that? Do they have enough in terms of crime intelligence work to be able to know what is happening and take preventative steps? We cannot sit in a situation whereby we say, well, we should now be looking at who is going to be arrested after such utter destruction and violence that we have seen, which has infringed upon many more people beyond just the members of the ANC.
Okay, the lines are open on 01154222186, so you can tweet at ANN7TV. We've also spoken to Minister of Sanitation and Water Affairs, Nomvula Mokonyana, a little bit earlier on, asking her reaction on the violence that spread out and whether this was an indication of the factionism within the party.
The NC has registered ward candidates in 237 municipalities, and the African National Congress is contesting every ward, almost 4,000 wards across the length and breadth of South Africa. And yes, there has been those pockets of violence and protest and unhappiness, but we are the only party. We are the only party that has got processes that promote inner party democracy, but we even are the only party that goes out to society and say, members of this community in this ward, here is Nomvula. What is your view about Nomvula, Steve and Paula? And the community must make a determination. Out of that determination, the NC then has a screening process where we then assess the validity of the standing of the individuals until they are put in an order of priority 1 up to 3. There are issues that are a fact. We are a country that is faced with a high level of unemployment. And some people want to do this out of the love to serve the organization. Others do this with an intention to serve the NC. We have agreed on internal processes of dealing with disputes, and once disputes have been attended throughout the process, we then have to move on.
All right, we'll take calls now. Grant, you first in line, calling us from Roodepoort. Tebogo will be coming to you in Rustenburg. Hello, Grant.
Good evening, Cindy, and good evening to all the viewers.
Welcome.
A few weeks ago, we had a discussion about the internal fabrication of the ANC and their organization and their operations. It seems to me that there is a lot of unhappiness within the ANC. They are completely fragmented at the moment. And unfortunately, when these sort of things happen now with the appointment of the new mayoral candidate for Pretoria, the ANC people are showing their unhappiness, and this then gets exploited by criminals. When there is any marches, they then go and they loot the shops and all that. We accept that there's a lot of criminal activity behind this, but it is coupled with the ANC's and people in the ANC's unhappiness. And this ANC seems to be compromised from the very top to the bottom. They're making compromise decisions. They're making compromises that affect the people on the front, and this is a recipe for disaster. Surely ANC, the leadership must now stand strong and lead from the front.
Grant?
If they can't do it, then the people must lead them.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your call. We get it from our political analyst who will explain the structures and the workings of the ANC in terms of its constitution. Because like you're saying, it can't just be deployment any willy-nilly if the people don't have a choice. But let's take Tebogo. Thanks for your call, by the way, Grant. Tebogo, you in Rustenburg. Hello.
Yes, hello, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, actually, I want to make a concern that parachuted leaders will always weaken the organization. I'm speaking like this because I'm also voting for ANC. Because if you parachute a leader, you will weaken the organization. We have seen it in the youth league. But my point is, Mokonyane said he's from Ward 6. But in Mutsweding FM, somebody from that region, a leader, said he was in Ward 91. So they must...
Okay, we lost Tebogo there. But just looking at maybe the archaic or old ways of doing things for the ANC, they need to be a little bit more innovative, because this centralism of democracy doesn't necessarily seem to work. Yes, there will be some that lose, there are those that will win, but if it's going to be reflected in the streets, as we've seen, or even in open letters and whatever other forum, isn't it perhaps time to self-respect, or reflect rather, and correct what's going on there?
Look, this certainly for me is a strategic inflection point for the leadership of the African National Congress at all levels. And one of the things that one has to take into account or consider is that why such a fundamental misunderstanding? Because the nomination or the determination as to who will be the mayoral candidate for the ANC throughout the country is not the privilege of members, but is the privilege of the PEC, coming from a process that was outlined in terms of Resolution 57 of the 52nd National Conference, which is known as the Polokwane Conference. However, when one looks at it now, that for many years, the ANC has spoken at length about the importance of political education, whereby the members of the African National Congress can clearly understand the party, its working, its ethics, its customs and traditions. But certainly we've seen that a complete failure in that regard. And they now have to ask themselves a question: how do they move forward from this setback? How do they ensure that their members really clearly understand even their own internal processes? Because the members of the ANC are not the only supporters, because there are a whole host of other people who are not card-carrying members, but that ordinarily would vote for the African National Congress.
That's exactly my question.
And that is a problem they sit with.
But now, is it incumbent, is it squarely on the responsibility of a party supporter to now have to educate themselves on the constitution of the party and its operational processes? Is it really fair to even expect ordinary supporters to have to know? All they have to do is just suggest a preferred candidate, and that person is expected to be on the list. Is this a case of misunderstanding on your part, or do you think that members need to empower themselves, the supporters need to empower themselves more?
Well, I guess as much as, well, perhaps just to reflect on what my colleague said earlier on, I guess the processes that the ANC has employed for the nomination of candidates, it's quite a very democratic process where branches, including the public, gets involved in the nomination process. But we all know that we've seen in the media that the Tshwane area wasn't handled in the same way. But I think explanation has been given. The issue of the education of our people, I guess all of us as South Africans, 20 years is still a very short period of time. And I think the evolution of our democracy, the strengthening of our systems of oversight within the parties themselves, as well as in the community, it's something that is going to be with us for quite some time. Our view, though, is that we will always be faced with dissatisfaction. If we are satisfied, we shouldn't tear ourselves apart. We shouldn't go to destruction. We shouldn't burn our roads. We shouldn't kill people. If we are satisfied, we've got democratic processes that are protected by the Constitution, where we can voice our feelings in a democratic way. That's what we need to do. And I think us as community leaders, civic leaders, the media and everyone else should really be working hard to educate our people about this important constitutional imperative, the Bill of Rights that is entrenched in our Constitution.
All right, so earlier we spoke to Minister of Water and Sanitation, and we asked her whether this decision to make the mayoral candidates list ahead of the elections available and public, or whether this was a good decision or not. And this is her response.
Let us live with this decision. It is the first time that we do it. And I think the fact that it is not across the country, we must not think it is a bad decision. It is not a bad decision because there are problems in Tshwane. And there shouldn't have been problems in Tshwane had we members of the ANC in Tshwane conducted ourselves in line with the rules and the constitution of the ANC. Because communities got involved out of our own conduct, and hence within the party we will have to deal with those individuals, and within the communities the police must act, because banning a clinic does not actually make the ANC to change its mind on who the mayor should be. Banning a bus does not actually do that. There is no way in the constitution of the ANC to say the last option when you are dissatisfied as a member of the ANC is to take it to the streets. It says there are processes, and not even a branch gets involved in the appointment of a mayoral candidate, just as a branch does not get involved in the appointment of a premier candidate. We have to move on and we have to learn out of this, but we must celebrate that in many other constituencies of the African National Congress in South Africa, with more than 230 mayoral candidates, people understand inner party democracy and how the ANC functions. If people want to change it, the beauty about the ANC, next year we're going to a policy conference. Discuss it in your branch. And the good thing about the ANC is that policies are discussed with the involvement of sectors that must make input. If you think we must throw away that rule, let's talk about it internally. Convince each other in the branch, in your region, in the province, so that we have a mandate to come to the National Policy Conference to then get all branches in the policy conference to take a view that to hold. For now, this is criminality. It can't be justified out of any political reason. It's political thuggery.
Minister, we also know that moving into the councillor structure, especially if you are in a poor paying position as an ANC member, that this is rather lucrative in advancing your career as a member in good standing. So how much of this incentive intensifies the candidates list process?
It is, because like I said, other people assume that this is an opportunity for you to get employed. And yet, we all are deployed for a period of 5 years. After 5 years, you are subjected to the processes of the ANC. Nobody gets guaranteed an opportunity to continue until the party pronounces. Secondly, we also know that there has also been factionalism that gets applied, and hence we have actually said that demon is a demon that we must all condemn and accept, that it cuts across the structures of the movement. It even cuts across outside of the structures of the movement in communities where people just fight amongst themselves, where branch members fight amongst themselves, where lives are lost. A life was lost in Tshwane whilst we were there, some of us on Sunday, until late at night. People were hacked. We must condemn that. So the economic opportunity of assuming responsibility is something that we must also guard against, so that then it does not become the precondition or the only reason why an individual wants to serve the African National Congress.
Thank you, Minister. Let's take a caller. Tabiso in Soshanguve. Thanks for calling. And what's your view or question?
Here in Soshanguve, we have got kids, little guys, these myope boys who are doing all these things. They don't know what responsibility is. They've been going through all the shops, Midas shops, Pick and Pay, taking things. Now I'm here at home at Block XX. I hear on the news they are saying the police will take the law and then you help people. There is not even one fan of the police. The people are jumping inside the shops, they're taking everything. Why do these people, they're doing their thing there by their offices, then it affects us people who don't even know, who don't want even to be in that politics. These small boys, they didn't even register to vote. They don't care. They don't care. And us people here, we are suffering because of their decisions that they do on top there. They do their...
Yes, there's also been a clarion call to for community members to respond or at least notify the police of any wrongdoing or criminality. Do you feel disempowered in the sense that, as you're saying, there's not enough visibility? Do you feel that this might render you vulnerable in that community?
Yes, there's none, not even them, which is coming here. And the people that are doing these things, there are people who don't even watch the TV. They don't even...
All right, thanks so much, Tabi. So we have Pastor Moyo, I believe. Hello, Pastor, and thanks for calling. And what's your question of you?
Yes, ma'am. How are you?
I'm also thank you.
Firstly, this is just a criminality from the people in Pretoria. Now, what the ANC did is that after they've seen that there are issues within the organization, within the ANC in Tshwane, they then decided to say, let's rather have an individual who will come and unite that, that region. Unfortunately, when people see that there is a wound within the organization, they take advantage of that. That's why they ban buses and all that. But my call is the civil society in that area. I think it is time now that we realize that ANC doesn't only need a political solution. The pastors in that area, they need to unite to pray for all these acts of criminalities. We are not talking about just the ANC that is disgruntled in that area. You know, there are issues of Mavuso. There are a lot of issues that are taking place in Tshwane that requires all the pastors in that area to come together and say, let's pray so that this region or that city will be in peace. That's the only solution that is needed right now.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much, Pastor Moyo, calling us from Newcastle. But just, is this a reflection of the ANC allowing the division or the rot to fester beyond its ability to control it and manage the situation, Tabo?
Yeah. My view is that the nomination of Tshwane Diza was actually a pragmatic and best decision under the circumstances, taking into account that the problem of Tshwane region of the ANC are not new. They've been simmering and they've been there for quite a while. So most certainly, I think that they took the best decision under the circumstances. However, where I'm seeing fault in the manner they went about it was how they then communicated that decision, taking into account the fact that these problems have been simmering for a long time. I think that they should have been more discerning in the manner in which they communicated the nomination of Tshwane Diza, and more so, as I mentioned on Sunday, that when you look at the other policy which is important of the ANC, that of gender parity, certainly when you look at all the other metros that the ANC is more than likely to win and to retain, therefore it was actually a good step to go in and nominate a woman for an important metro such as Tshwane. However, what we have not seen now is that the leadership of the ANC cannot be talking to the people from either Lituli House or from Walter Sisulu House. They have to be on the ground showing that unity and be able to engage with the members. And for the members also to understand that actually they are not the only stakeholders. They are not the only game in town. They are a whole host of other people who are residents that if anything, they might harden their attitude towards the ANC as a direct result of the conduct of these members.
As we've heard that some are threatening to give the vote on a silver platter to opposition parties. But let's talk about the active citizenship, as Pastor Moyo was calling for, and Tabiso saying that we need to reclaim the streets. If there are elements of criminality, let's be as a collective and root these out. Do you think that, Sanko, you have that kind of muscle to mobilize?
I surely do welcome the caller the pastor that called in. Sanko's view is that communities should take charge of their affairs. They should regain their streets. They should expose criminals amongst themselves, because police cannot deal with all the criminals that are out there in the field. But if communities were to stand up, you would need very minimal police intervention. So leaders in communities are very crucial. Members of Sanko, pastors, teachers, you name, business people, when incidents of this nature occurs, those leaders should stand up and call on our people to come and also to adhere to the rule of law.
We'll find out why that is not happening, evidently. But let's take a call of Vusi in Venda. Thanks for your call.
Good evening, ma'am. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, I'm fine. I just want to comment, about what is happening at the moment at Rebellion around Pretoria. Ma'am, I'm not a member of any political party. But what is happening, I'm not happy. I usually go to other countries like Botswana, Swaziland, all these countries. But in South Africa, what we're lacking, this is not a freedom. This is not a democracy. And I just heard that the other guy, that ANC has failed. You know why? ANC has not failed. If you compare to other countries like Swaziland, Botswana, what, is that a lot? Yes, there is corruption, but we need to sacrifice. There's no law. I think the law is not working, and there's no respect in this country. No respect. If you don't want someone, it doesn't mean that go and ban the buses, go and ban the train, go and ban the road, go and ban everything. Where are we going as a country? I'm wishing that if the minister, if he can hear me, why he can't send the defense force to go and protect all the people there?
All right, well, Davusi, thanks so much. We're out of time. We really appreciate declaring a state of emergency the right way to go about it. But just as you wrap up very briefly, and yourself, Umatlang.
No, that would not be the solution. The solution, I believe, would be that to empower civic organizations such as SANCO to be able to do really the work and influence the people. The people on the ground need to have confidence that should they approach the law enforcement agencies, most certainly they will be protected. But when you see incidences as we have seen, whereby the Metro Police, the police car, whether turned down or torched, that does not inspire confidence on anybody. What the law enforcement agencies now need to do is to be able to gain that confidence and assure the South Africans that truly they can be in charge, and they can be able to ensure that there is peace and stability for all South Africans. And the longer they take from assuring South Africans, I think the more all of us should be worried.
Well, I guess South Africa is facing difficulties. I mean, we have rating agencies waiting to see as to what happens in our country. Incidents of this nature really gives us a very bad image externally, and I think the sooner we get the matters arrested, the better. And our communities, once more, we call for calm in Tshwane and hope that everyone can respect the rule of law.
All right, thanks indeed for joining us on the debate, and thank you at home for making the calls as well. We're joined by political analyst Tshepo Khadima, Jabu Mahlangwe, SANCO spokesperson, and we had an earlier interview with the Minister of Sanitation and Water, and that's Nomvula Mokonyane. We're back after this.